A beautiful day in Alton, Virginia, and they say good things come to those who wait. Well, the competitors, the drivers, the teams, the fans have waited 8 weeks to see the IMSA Prototype Challenge back in action, and no better place than here at Virginia International Raceway. Absolutely gorgeous day to take on this racetrack. One of those, we'll call it resurgence of sports car racing, the renaissance of sports car racing. That back in the 50s when so many of these great tracks were built, Virginia International Raceway was one of those. It has everything. Great passing opportunities in turn 1, the climbing S's up to the treacherous turn 11 and turn 12. You need to get out of 12 to get down the back straightaway all the way down to 14, and then the roller coaster diving down the hill, 2 left-hand turns followed by a long sweeping right turn 17, also known as Hogpen, and you have completed a lap at VIR. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Brian Till, along with Jeremy Shaw. We'll have all the action for you today. And Prototype Challenge never disappoints, and they certainly won't hear, Jeremy, good aerodynamics on these cars, good horsepower, and that means good racing.
Yeah, plenty of fun to drive these cars. They got, as you say, they are proper racing cars, and the drivers absolutely love them, but particularly on a track like VIR, because this is one of the most challenging and scenic and enjoyable racetracks in the country. It's a real challenge for the drivers, and this 2-hour race is going to be a challenge for the drivers as well.
You think about it, the temperature's going to be warming up early morning here, and the track is going to change throughout this race as the sun begins to beat down on this surface. And I think it'll be interesting, Jeremy, to see how that balance changes. But behind the safety car right now, take us through the grid.
Yeah, and this is going to be a 90-minute race, by the way, not 2 hours. It's the drivers would love it to be 2 hours because they just enjoy this racetrack so much. Yes, 16 cars on the grid then. At the back, having changed their tyres after qualifying. That's not allowed. You're supposed to start the race on the tyres which you qualified, but they had an off during the qualifying session. So starting at the back will be David Grant in caliber 40 for JDC Motorsports. Alongside him in another Duquesne DO8 chassis for CT Motorsports in car number 46 is Steve Scullen. Row 7 on the grid is John Sorino. Car number 57, that's the Offenen Motorsports Ligier JSP 320. Similar car alongside for Arve Motorsports with GRS. Car number 61 is George Stakos from Canada. Car number 47, John Brownson for 47 Motorsports. That's another Duquesne. Will start in the 12th position. Alongside, making his debut this weekend for Performance Tech Motorsports, another Ligier. Car number 7 is Robert Mao. Row 5 on the grid, Terry Olsen in car number 3, that's for Junior 3 Racing, a Ligier, and then alongside him a Duquesne of AWA, car number 17 is Anthony Mantella from Canada. Ari Baylog will start car number 30, a Junior 3 Racing Ligier, alongside the US Racetronics Ligier, car number 77 of Brian Thenis from Southern California. Shane Lewis making his return to the series in car number 74 for Riley Motorsports in a Ligier, another similar car alongside. The second of the Performance Tech Motorsports entries, car number 6, is Dan Goldberg. Row 2 on the outside, Jason Rabe in car number 54, defending series champion team MLT Motorsports, another Ligier, and then the Duquesne in 3rd position on the grid for JDC Motorsports in car number 23, Memo Gidley. Onto the front row, Josh Sarche in car number 44 for Arve Motorsports with GRS. That's another Ligier, and a similar car on the pole position. That's the championship leader for Wolver Racing. Car number 60 is Tony Skazimets.
Let's get you caught up with the championship standings as the safety car dives down through the roller coaster one more time and back onto the front straightaway. Tony Skazimets leads the championship. Alexander Kariba, Memo Gidley just behind him by about 110 points, but still have that opportunity to close in and certainly gain points here this weekend, and this championship far from over with. But Josh Sarge, what a great job in qualifying, Jeremy, to put that car on the second row. That's between Gidley and Kazimets, and that's going to be a problem all race long because Kaz Grala sharing that car with Sarge. And Grala, you may be familiar with if you watch Xfinity NASCAR events, spending a lot of time in the NASCAR world, but back to sports car racing here this weekend.
Yeah, he's done some sports car racing in the past, but he's not driven an LMP3 car before, certainly. Josh Sarchet was a part of that championship winning team for MLT Motorsports last season, making his return to the series this year. He did one race earlier this year, but this is his first start with Tony Arve's Arve Motorsports with GKS team. So he's done a good job there with a fairly limited track time as Josh Sarchet. Also been doing some WeatherTech Sports Car Championship races this season, so just picking up experience. He's done really well to qualify this car on the front row.
Well, also look at Corey Lewis. When was the last time Corey Lewis was in an LMP3 car?
Yeah, a while ago, to be honest. It was he has done some. He's done one race in the past. That was back in 2018 when he finished 9th. But great to see the veteran back again. He's a very young 55 years of age these days, from Jupiter, Florida, and he's going to be driving alongside Gar Robinson, who is just here for some fun this weekend. His primary focus is a WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, but he's a racer, and the LMP3 cars are not part of the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship this weekend. So hey, why not bring the car out and have some fun here at VIR, because it's such a fun place to come.
Well, and a lot of the drivers too, Jeremy, several throughout the field competing in other series here this weekend, including Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. And then Courtney Crone sharing the number 3 car with Terry Olson. She is a recipient of the IMSA Diverse Driver Development Scholarship. She's one of the finalists there this season. And Courtney Crone really showing well in her second season of LMP3. So it's a really diverse field, as you talk about drivers with a lot of experience who've been around for a while and have driven in multiple different series, and then new drivers like Courtney Crone trying to make their way into the world of professional motorsports. So it's such a diverse field here. I think it's one of the things that makes this series so interesting to watch.
I agree. I think that is a cool aspect to this championship. I mean, it's a great. These cars, these are real racing cars. I mean, these are fast cars, as you said earlier on. They've got plenty of horsepower, plenty of downforce as well. So, this is not for the faint of heart. These are proper race cars, and it is a great stepping stone for their future aspirations. Those who have eyes set, for youngsters who have eyes set on competing in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, the Rolex 24 at Daytona, or even the Le Mans 24 Hours. This is a great way to get into it.
It's a great way to get into it, and that's a perfect segue to getting into it, because they're coming to the green flag. The clock has already started. It was supposed to be only one pace lap, but due to the morning conditions and the dampness of the track, I think the officials wanted to run one extra pace lap, so they started the clock at the beginning of that second pace lap. So the race clock has started. Now the race has started in earnest as Tunis Kazimets jumps from his pole position and leads down to turn 1. Oh, and a problem early on. Back of the field, a car off. The number 7, Christopher Allen, Robert Maw, fielding that car this weekend, and it was Maw behind the wheel, and another problem there in turn 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's Robert. He must have got maybe a little bit of a touch there and into the braking zone at turn 1, and around that car went. So that's a disappointing start for Robert. He and his friend Christopher Allen making their debut. Yeah, he just locked up the brakes, I think, and these brakes and tires not yet fully up to temperature. And it caught him out there. Just a bit of lack of experience. Also coming out of turn 2 there. There's another spin. So we got drama early on in this race. Let's see what happened. Yeah, boy, that car just suddenly shot across the road, didn't it? That was bizarre, to be perfectly honest. Robert and Christopher Allen, they're longtime buddies. Mao's an ex-Navy officer. They've raced together in various BMWs. They've even done some racing in Europe, including at the Nürburgring in a BMW. So they've got a reasonable amount of experience, but this is their first time in an LMP3 car.
There's the 17 that also spun in turn 2, that Anthony Mantella, and I think the same reason, Jeremy. I think the tire's cold right now. The track really doesn't have a lot of temperature in it, so it's going to take several laps to get these cars to their prime. And another car off now. That's the 30, Ari Balog, off at the end of the back straightaway. So the track conditions right now, obviously very, very treacherous. Again, not a lot of temperature in the tires, not a lot of temperature in the track. It's going to take several laps to get the balance that you want on these cars. And the problem is The grass is probably quite damp because of the dew from overnight, and getting out into it and not hitting anything, you're very lucky. And for Ari Balog and Robert Mao, very lucky indeed, once they got off in those braking zones, not to find the tire wall on the far side of the grass.
Yeah, so a bit of a dramatic first lap there for several contenders. And Anthony Mantella, he's driven lots of cars, and he just got caught out there, just got on the throttle a little bit too hard coming out of turn 1-2 there. So unfortunate for him, he'll be kicking himself for that one. And for Ari Balog, yeah, it looks like he just kind of ran out of the road there at the top of the roller coaster, and he goes across the grass. But again, no harm, no foul. I think everybody was able to continue.
Tonis Kasemets leads into 11 and 12. Josh Sargent has fallen back a little bit, and Memo Gidley has taken over the second spot. That's good news for he and Alexander Kariba in their championship hunt. 1,020 points for Kasemets as they came in, 910 for Kariba and Gidley. Gidley and Kariba had that win at Mid-Ohio, but the other two rounds, Daytona and Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Tonis Kasemets put on a driving clinic, especially north of the border up at Mosport, as it is still known, and that is what has solidified him the championship lead.
Yeah, he's been on fantastic form as Tonis Kasemets. Started off the season with his longtime friend and driver whom he coached in this championship, Bruce Hamilton. They won that first round at Daytona, as you say, Brian. And then after that, Bruce said, okay, look, I've been around the sport a long, long time. I've had enough. But, Tonis, if you want to carry on with the championship, do so. And that's a very cool gesture by Bruce Hamilton here. And Tonis has taken that opportunity with both hands. As you say, 2 wins out of 3 races this season, and second in the other race. It's been a brilliant effort for Tonis. He's been around the sport a long, long time. And he's loving this opportunity and very grateful for the opportunity that Bruce Hamilton has given him.
I was going to say, how long do you think it took him to say yes when Bruce Hamilton offered up the rest of the season to run? I don't think it took very long, do you?
I don't think it did, no. I think it was a fairly easy one, that one. It's cool to see, and it's great to see Memo Gidley here running in second place as well. A good start for Memo. He's another guy who's been around this sport a long, long time. Of course, had a horrific crash at Daytona a number of years ago now, and it took him, well, 3 or 4 years to get over the effects of that horrible injuries to his lower legs, lower extremities, and was suffered a back pain which was just, almost unbearable. I mean, let's put it that way. It was horrific for Memo, but he's one of those guys that worked so hard to get into the sport in the first place, and it wasn't going to stop him coming back again. And wonderful to see him driving this AL Autosport with JDC Motorsports entry this weekend with the youngster Alex Kariba, who's really made a name for himself this season.
Tell you who's putting in the performance of the day, and granted it's early, but that's Dan Goldberg running in third in the red number 6, putting pressure on Memo Gidley. In fact, Goldberg fastest sector in sector 1 last time by, and only a couple of tenths off of Tonis Kasemets' lap the last time by. He's dropped back a little bit this time, and I think it may be because he's being held up just a little bit by Memo Gidley. Goldberg with an impressive run early on.
Yeah, he's not hanging around, is he? He wants to get on with it. Dan's got a pretty useful amount of experience these days. He's from Delray Beach in Florida. He's basically a builder by profession, and he raced in the old IMSA Lights Championship with the old Elan Mazda cars, or in the last decade, basically, and had some success there. And then a couple of years ago made a bit of a comeback in this championship, and he's a sort of an irregular racer this year. He hasn't done all of the rounds, but he's certainly competitive. And he's having a good run here in the early stages in that Performance Tech Motorsports car number 6. His teammates, of course, to the number 7 car, Robert Mao, that had that spin early on.
I think Dan Goldberg has always been impressive in this LMP3 machinery, and I think we've seen this in the past, Jeremy. The Ligier chassis seems to come to life a little bit earlier than the Duquesne did. And I don't know if that's what we're seeing here today, because now Memo Gidley seems to have found a little more speed, pulling out from Goldberg just a little bit. I have to look at the lap times to see if it's indicative of Gidley in fact going quicker or Goldberg going slower. But yeah, Memo Gidley now considerably faster than he was on his first couple of laps. So I think perhaps the way the setup is on that Duquesne, it's just going to take it a little bit longer to get up to speed. That may not be good news in case we have any type of a today, because if that's the case, you need to be able to pounce early on a restart. And it may not be the case that Memo Gidley or Alexander Kariba have that kind of car underneath them, based upon what I see right now.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, very early stages. So there's Ari Balog coming into the pits in car number 30. That's one of the Junior 3 racing entries. It was he who was off the road. It is him, isn't it?
No,
he was off the road.
40.
It is the 40, isn't it?
There's a penalty, a false start, lining up on the wrong side there at the start for David Grant. So the day goes from bad to worse. They had to start last when they changed tires after qualifying, and now the drive-through penalty.
Yeah, true that. There's two yellow cars. One's got yellow and red, which is Ari Baylor, which with that barrier that was, David Grant. So yes, it has been a bad day. They started at the back, as you say. Now he's got to work his way through again. He had got himself up into the 12th position. He's made a couple of passes on that first lap, not just as a result of people sliding off the road, because he had a bit of an off himself, because I think he came into the pits at the end of the first lap as well. So he's now going to do it all again as David Grant, but he won't mind that. Massively experienced in mainly Formula Atlantic cars is where David and his brother Keith have done most of their racing, but absolutely love these LMP3 cars.
Well, I think they're, and a problem.
Oops.
That's down at Hogpen. The 77 is off. Brian Thenis behind the wheel right now. He's started that car. Patrick Kiala will take it over. And you can see how damp the grass is with all the dew, trying to get that car moving and get it back to the racing surface. The problem is you don't want to enter the racetrack perpendicular right there. You'd like to get kind of parallel with it as you come across, and you can see the water actually just streaming off the bodywork. All of that moisture picked up from the grass. They're at Hogpen, and just know if there was another car looking inside, I don't think they were close enough to make contact.
No, I think he just kind of got a bit optimistic there with I think he probably felt there was a bit more grip than there actually was. So around he goes onto the grass. An easy mistake to make at that part of the circuit, certainly. But he didn't anything solid, so should be able to get back on again and challenge once more.
Speaking of challenging, good race for third down the back straightaway, side by side. Josh Sargé in the white and orange 44, trying to get past that red number 6 of Dan Goldberg, and does, with a powerful move into the braking zone. And Goldberg looks like he's lost the handle on that Ligier a little bit, Jeremy. I saw him up in turn 11 and 12, sliding a bit wide. The car looked like rotating a little bit too much at the entry, so perhaps the balance going away. We said this racetrack was going to change as the temperatures began to climb, and the more the cars run on it, the more that's going to help heat up the racing surface as well, and the balance will change as those temperatures change.
Yeah, it will. Tony Kazimierz, he's just running a nice sort of consistent pace out front. He's pulling away from Memo Gidley at 2 or 3 or 4 tenths of a second a lap. The gap now almost 4 seconds actually between first and second. And Josh Sargé there, who had a sort of a pretty mediocre first lap, he lost a couple of positions, has now gained one of them back again by passing Dan Goldberg, and now he's going to set his sights on Memo Gidley and try and close in to move back to towards where he started, which was in second position.
4 good battles down the front straightaway, and you'll see this throughout the day as we look to a pit stop somewhere around the mid portion of the race. It's a minimum 40-minute drive time, and the number 7, Amau, trying to work his way back up after that problem at the start with the locked brakes and sliding off. 7 now beginning to put pressure on George Stakos in front in the 61 as they come into turn 3 and 4. good little battle.
It is a good little battle, and Robert got some good pace here. He's showing, he's made up for that error at the start. He's probably been a couple of seconds a lap quicker than George Stakos, who's, as a result of those other people throwing themselves off the road, has moved up from 13th to 9th. But I think Robert Mao certainly has the pace there here in that number 7 car to get past him. The question is, where does he do it? Because having the speed, and it's not an easy track to overtake on. He's got to get a good run here out of the old Oak Tree corner onto the back straight away, pick up some momentum, perhaps a little bit of draft, but he didn't make a particularly good exit there, did he? He's actually lost a little bit of ground coming out of that corner, because coming up now up the back straight, the roller coaster, it's a good place to make a pass, but it's nowhere near close enough to challenge George Stakos as they reach the top of the hill.
And you wonder too, Jeremy, about the experience or the lack of experience as more side-by-side action down the back straightaway going on. And that is a place where it takes a lot of commitment to get by somebody. Anthony Mantella working his way back up through the field. David Grant in there as well as they dive down through the roller coaster. And you can get it done, but we were talking about the 7 of Mao. He and Allen both, as Mao coming back, looking on Stakos down into turn 1. The amount of experience they have in prototypes or downforce cars is limited, it seems, from what I can tell. And you got to think they've got to not only learn this racetrack, but they have to learn this car. And the nuances between it and GT type machinery are significant, let's say, especially with the aerodynamics and the horsepower.
Yeah, that's right. It's for most of these guys, it's a very different car to what they're driving. And Rob Mao there, he's stretching the limits there of the racetrack, straying a couple of wheels onto the grass, and he's a lot quicker than George, but he can't find a way past.
Well, he's quicker in certain areas of the racetrack, and that's what got me thinking about being familiar or unfamiliar with the car, and I think trying to learn to take advantage of the strengths of the aerodynamics that he has is where he's lacking a little bit right now, and that's what's keeping him from finding that way by.
Yeah, that's I think that's absolutely fair comment, but there's all sorts of battles here. This is right down towards the tail end of the field, coming around Oak Tree. These are all guys who've been off the road or in the pits or both in the early stages. The battle is John Sorino in that Offenham Ligier, who's ahead at the moment, but Anthony Mantella is going to move alongside him and probably make that pass as they head into the roller coaster section of the track. Yes, indeed, he does. And right behind him is David Grant, who's had 2 pit stops so far in this race in that bright yellow caliber 40. That's a teammate car to the car that's currently running in 2nd place for Memo Gidley, part of the JDC Motorsports umbrella.
And Anthony Mantella is another one of these drivers who found, and a problem.
It's George Stakos.
It's George Stakos, and I don't believe there was contact. I think they were far enough away, but he had been being hounded by Ma, and so around he goes in turn 1. Seems to be a popular place to spin today, down there in that 1 and 2 area. Down to turn 1. It's in there, and a very similar spin to the one that Ma had at the start. He just gets in there, and I think what happens, Jeremy, is they go down more gear before they should. Before they've gotten the car slowed down, it locks up the rear tires, and around the car goes. As soon as those rears lock, the tail end of the car is going to want to get to the front, and obviously it did right there.
Yeah, just when the back end starts going faster than the front end, you generally got a problem. That's exactly what happened there. And around goes George Stakos. So
I've never heard it put that way, but I like it.
Yeah, he'll come back from that, but yeah, that'll shake your confidence for a couple of laps, I would imagine.
Well, if you can't put your finger on the exact cause of it, you don't know why, then you're going to be a little bit timid perhaps the next time in. Well, timid is nothing that Anthony Mantella has ever been in his driving career, but he's another one of these guys who found the LMP3 machinery and said, what have I been missing? This is absolutely fantastic. I love the aerodynamics. I love the way the car rockets around the racetrack with the aerodynamics, the big tires, the horsepower, well over 450 horsepower in these machines, a big V8 in the back, and he just was all smiles when I talked to him early in the season about it, and he had a great run at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, putting the car on the podium in third. And he's a guy that just loves this prototype machinery, not having the day he wanted here with that spin in turn 2 at the start, but working his way back through.
He is, and you know, there's a long way to go in this race. It's still an hour and 10 minutes, and there is a mandatory pit stop that the cars will have to serve at some stage during this race as well. There's a spin for John Sorino in that Ophanim Ligier. He's fine exploring the limits. He's going to be sharing that car this season with his sons. This weekend it's John Jr., university known as Nigel. All of his sons, by the way, are kind of, well, and his daughter actually are nicknamed after racing drivers. There's Nigel named after Mansell. There's Jacques after Villeneuve, and his daughter is known as Senna as well. So it's kind of cool family there. They're super enthusiastic, and the dad here is having so much fun in these LMP3 cars, and Nigel really looking forward to his debut in these cars this weekend. He's had some success in club racing. He finished second in the SECA national runoffs a few years ago, so you know, he's certainly got some pace, and he'll be looking to show that in the second half of this race.
They did not go to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, ran the first 2 races of the season, but now we're back here, and that's awesome to see. Should mention David Grant didn't run in Canadian Tire Motorsport Park either, and just elected not to make the trip north of the border, so he's back in the saddle, and perhaps that's why a couple of mistakes on his part today. You think it's been 8 weeks since we were there. Think about the time before that. It was mid-Ohio, so it's been a long time since David Grant and the Serinos have been behind the wheel of their LMP3 mount, but certainly enjoying it here, as is Tony's Casimir, 6 seconds out in front of Memo Gidley. And now Josh Sargent has brought that fight back to Gidley after the, as you said, somewhat lackluster first lap that he had, where he dropped well back, lost a couple of positions, but he is back with a vengeance, and he may be able to make the move down into turn 1. Good draft off the Duquesne in front. Gidley to the outside. He's going to stay there. Does he get by? Indeed he does. Sargent through relatively easily.
Yeah, that was a really nicely judged pass there by Josh Sargent. He had really good pace, had a good run out of the final corner. Hogpen turn 17, able to use that draft and then make that pass quite cleanly at turn 1. Again, Memo he knows his co-driver Alex Kariba is really fast, so he's not going to be worried too much about that at this stage in the race. But I know he'll be, you know, Memo is super competitive, and he won't like being passed by anybody. So Tony's Kazmats has just had his best lap of the race so far, a 1 minute 43.63. That is the new fastest lap of the race, and he's extended his lead now to 7.3 seconds over. Well, it'll be Sargent now in second position, and across the line, of course, it's still Memo Gidley. But you see now how fast Josh Sargent can be, because in actual fact, a couple of laps ago, he did set the new best lap of the race. So that was the best lap for Tony's, but Josh Sargent was a tenth quicker on the previous lap. So really good pace here from Josh Sargent.
And interesting to note, at the pit stop, Kazimits has no co-driver, so he'll not hand over to anybody. Sargent will hand over to Kaz Grala, as we talked about earlier. And the thing that's interesting is, in the prototype challenge, there is no time penalty on pit road for a single driver versus a dual driver format. So they'll sit on pit road for the same amount of time, but Kazimits will have to go out and attack the racetrack, having already spent a fair amount of time in the car. That's good and it's bad, right, Jeremy? I mean, it's good in that he knows what he's got, but you would think that having a fresh driver in somewhere around the midpoint of the race is going to help you there in the closing minutes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not super hot at the moment. It's going to be super hot, I think, later on in the day, but it's in sort of mid to high 70s already, even this morning. But, you know, well, just about 9 o'clock in the morning. but you know, these cars are pretty physical. And whoops, there's a spin.
Wow.
For the number 3 car. That's Terry Olsen. Goes around. He was running in the 7th position, doing a nice job there too, right behind Shane Lewis, which was a pretty impressive run there for Terry. But he's had a spin. I think he might be able to actually rejoin without losing another position. He's got on the power. Just got on the power a little bit too soon.
It might be one of those things. It's easier for us to tell you who hasn't spun today.
Well, that's true. The first 3 haven't spun. I tell you what, Josh Sarchet has just reset the fastest lap of the race last time around. 1 minute 43.3 now for the 2nd place car, car number 44. Josh Sarchet is doing a really nice job, and you know, can he close the gap toward the leader?
It'll be interesting to see. Kazimets had a problem in the 2nd practice session and finished down the order a fair amount, but then came back in qualifying to put the car on the pole as Kazimets moves forward, and Sargé now coming clearer into the picture. It was a 7-second lead for Kazimets the last time by. Now it's under 6, 5.9 seconds to the leader. So he's really beginning to cut into that gap, as you said, Jeremy. And we see a lot of these spins coming off of the corners under power. These cars do have traction control, but in talking to the drivers, the vast majority of them run it very, very, very low to keep it from intruding too much in that power down coming off the corner. And that's a blessing and a curse. Just a little bit too much of it, as torquey as this V8 is, it can really light up the rear tires, and that's exactly what we've seen. We saw it with Mantella at the start. We saw it right there in the spin for Terry Olsen, and it's probably been the reason for a couple of these other spins today. Just a little too aggressive with that throttle and not enough interrupt on the TC.
Yep, and you know, it's all kind of part of the learning curve here for these guys. There's the 2nd place car making a move on Steve Scullen, who's already a lap down in car number 46. He and John Serino, who had that spin a few laps ago, both have been put a lap down by the leader, with just sort of not quite up to the half-hour point in this 90-minute race.
Count 5 Duquesne chassis. The remainder are Ligiers, and you can tell the difference with the nose cone. The Duquesne, a much more pointed nose cone than the Ligier has. The center section kind of rounded and scalloped on the Ligier as Tony's Kazimets flashes into turn 1, easily visible on our cameras. And then when you look at Memo Gidley's car, who runs in 3rd, you'll see that much more pronounced pointed nose cone on the Duquesne, and you can get an idea of the differences in the cars. We saw, and the drivers talked about more differences last year, Jeremy, but as they came up with this new evolution package for this season where all the cars had to run it, seems that those balances changed a little bit. We talked about this a little earlier about the Ligier coming up the temperature and balance quicker than the Duquesne, and that's what it looked like here at the start of the race. But that remains to be seen. As you can see that pointier nose cone on Memo Gidley as he comes by up through the climbing S's, the 23, that white 23 on the way up to the top of the hill. And another problem for Olsen down in turn 1. Yeah,
he's finding it hard going right now. It's just a shame because he had a really good start to the race. Oops, he's going to lose it on that wet glass as well, go around one more time. So, yeah, that's disappointing for Terry. He's not got a higher side, is it? No. He got it back on the racetrack, but that's cost him an awful lot of time. And he's now going to be well outside the top 10. There's some big gaps in the field, but unfortunately, he's chewed up most of those gaps with those couple of spins.
So easy to do in these long duration corners when you're just balancing the car right there in the middle of it. And you want to start to pick that throttle back up. But if you carry a little bit too much momentum in there and then you need to slow down, you're slowing down and putting weight on the nose of the car. At the same time, you're trying to keep it balanced, and it just gets the nose planted, the rear end comes around, and there's really not a lot that you can do with it. The problem, where the problem happens, is not where the problem started. The problem started with the speed into the corner.
It did, indeed, it did. Meanwhile, Tony Kazimets, he's going to be putting a lap on George Sakos in a moment in car number 61. But Tony's running good, consistent laps at the front of the field. But behind him, Josh Sarchet is just inching a little bit closer. But when Sarche first got past Memo Gidley, which was 4 laps ago, the gap was about 7 seconds from first to second. It's now 5.5, so he's pulled in a second and a half. He pulled in 2 or 3 tenths of a second on each of the last few laps, and this is going to cost Tönnies a little bit of time as he gets past George Stakos. So Sarche will be looking, when he catches him, which will be probably around about the end of this lap, that's the beginning of the follow-up, he'll be trying to get past as quickly as he can with minimal time loss and continue to make inroads into the lead that Tönnies Kazmas has right now in that Volvo Racing car number 60.
Round 4 of the 2022 IMSA Prototype Challenge continues from Virginia International Raceway. Brian Till, Jeremy Shaw with you. And Josh Sarge aboard the number 44, doing all he can to catch leader Tönnies Kazmat's beautiful braking control into turn 14 for Sarge, now diving down through the roller coaster, through Hogpen, that big compression right-hand turn onto the front straightaway. He'll see if he can get by the lap traffic in front of him a lot easier than the leader Tönnies Kazmat did. And for Sarge, he may very well have a chance to get by, and he does right there. Great job by Stakos to just let him by, but for Tönnies Kazmat, he was really held up in the climbing S's last time by. The lead now under 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So he's done a really nice job here, has Josh Sarche. The last lap was a 43.4, which is only a tenth of a second away from his fastest lap, and I don't think that pass will have cost him much time either. So you can see him, there is the gap as they come through the S's here and up to the climbing S's, up towards the top of the hill there at the north end of the racetrack. And the sun is certainly shining now on Josh Sarche. And after that tardy start, he's really in the groove now and charging hard.
Inside an hour to go, Sarge pushing forward. There's nothing better for a race car driver to have that target in sight now. Earlier in the preceding laps, when he had lap traffic in between and was several seconds farther back, hard to get an idea of where the leader was. Now you can see him. You can tell that your efforts are paying off. You're closing in, and each time you come out of a corner and you're a little bit closer, just fires you up that much more. Anthony Mantella right now fired up in the number 17, trying to make up for his problem at the start, chasing down Brian Thenis just in front of him in the 77 as they come into turn 1, and Mantella beginning to close.
He is. He's been with him now for a couple of laps. He hasn't been able to find a way past his Brian after that spin he had a little while ago. He was running well inside the top 10. By the way, Terry Olsen, he was so far ahead of the rest of the field that even with that extended spinaroo down in turn 1 there, when he was off the road and then spinning around again in the grass, he's still actually in the 8th position. So he's certainly given Courtney Crone a little bit more work to do in the second half of this race when she takes over from him, but he hasn't fallen out of the top 10, so good job there for Terry.
He'll have empty racetrack in front of him that he needs to make up, but like you said, he didn't lose a position, so that's good. A full course caution can bring it right back to you. Now the battle continues between Anthony Mantella and Brian Thenis up in turn 11 and 12. 12 will always be oak tree, even though that beautiful tree was lost several years ago in a storm. It was well over 100 years old, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Created havoc for the drivers from time to time as it would drop leaves and what some people called oak fuzz during the season, where it was producing its acorns and such onto the racetrack. But that was part of the beauty and the lore of this fantastic facility. The track remains the same. The challenge is the same. It's just a little bit different without the oak tree there. But for Anthony Mantella, interesting, Jeremy, it's like he was able to catch Thenis, but now he's right there and can't seem to close anymore in order to get the pass done.
No, that's right, and both of these two are up in their game. They've just both turned their best laps of the race so far on that particular lap, as they're getting a little bit closer to Ari Balog, who's ahead of them in car number 30. Meanwhile, Tönnies Kazmat, he's clearly got the message that Josh Sarche was getting closer, because Tönnies Kazmat just reset the fastest lap of the race at 1:42.9 for Tönnies Kazmat. Actually, each of the last 2 laps he has reset the fastest lap of the race, Tönnies, and that gap now out to a A slightly more comfortable 5.8 seconds between first and second. This battle between Themis and Mantella is really cool. They're both pushing themselves harder and harder to find more pace, and it's exactly what they're doing. Their last laps in the 1 minute 44s.
Well, it's interesting. We'll have to see. I think they're catching the three-way battle in front of them, which is Brownson, Olsen, and Maw, and they're beginning to close down on that battle out in front of them as they head down the back straightaway. So before long, you may have a 5-car train there for the battle for 7th. Certainly their lap times are quicker right now.
They are, and on a regular basis they are. But actually, last lap for Ari was a little bit quicker. You almost matched them on the last time around. So I think he's got the message to the pit communications to the drivers would be pretty frantic right now. I don't know if they'd be frantic, but they'll certainly be instructional. Let's put it that way, as they each of them trying to make up ground, and you're not too far behind these two, and actually not closing in much, not as much as I would have thought. It was David Grant in that yellow number 40 car as well.
Inside 54 minutes to go in another 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Drive time will be complete for driver number 1, and you can begin to think about making that pit stop for the driver change. When you do make the pit stop, you will refuel, and any pit stop that takes refueling here in the Prototype Challenge Series is a 91-second stop this weekend. So the cars will have to be on pit lane from the time they cross the pit end speed limiter sign to the exit of the pit lane, where the speed limit goes away and you can resume your charge on the racetrack. That time on pit road between those two markings is a minimum of 91 seconds. 3 people to work on the car. There'll be a vent man available as well, and somebody to help the driver. But those pit stops, I would imagine we'll start seeing them in the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, these cars can run around about an hour on a tank of fuel, and you know, there's sort of 2 schools of thought here. Either you stay out as long as you can and you know, extend, for Tony Skazemet's point of view, extend your lead, or come in and make your pit stop at the earliest opportunity, so that if there was to be a full course caution in this race, if somebody just go off the road and bring out a full course caution, then if you've already made your pit stop, you don't have to worry about the pits being closed. So it'd be interesting to see when Volvo Racing elects to bring Tony Skazemet in for his mandatory stop, because we've now got 52 minutes remaining in this race. So you can make it to the end from here. So anytime after now, I would expect to see the first round of pit stops.
Well, and for Tony Skazemet, I mean, you said it, Jeremy, about the full course caution, but they have more options available to them because it's a 40-minute minimum drive time. So really it's a 10-minute window for the teams that have 2 drivers. Once we get to 50 minutes to go in the race, 40 minutes is done for the first driver, so they can get out. The second driver would have his minimum 40 minutes in. You can't really run an hour. You're going to be close to not getting that second driver his 40 minutes if you take it right up to the hour. But for Tony Skazemet, doesn't really matter because he's a single driver. He's done his 40 minutes, and there's not a second one that you need to worry about. So it's kind of a 10-minute window, I would say, for the majority of cars from the 50-minute to go mark to the 40-minute to go mark. Time on pit lane does not count. That's the other thing. Even if you got in the car with 40 minutes and 20 seconds to go in the race, by the time you leave pit lane, if you cross that marker and it's 39 minutes and 59 seconds to go, you didn't satisfy your drive time, even though you'd been sitting in the car for technically more than 40 minutes. Drive time does not start until you are on the racetrack.
Exactly right, and that penalty will not be applied until after the race, and you'll go to the back of the back of the field basically. So yeah, that's something you don't want to make a mistake on. 50 minutes remaining in the race now, so I'm actually surprised we haven't seen 1 or 2 pit callers already in this race.
Expect them here in the next couple of minutes, I would think. But I mean, that same drive time rule applies. You're an IMSA fan, you know that it applies. You've heard about drive time before. It applies through all the different series. And quite honestly, I don't know how teams keep up with it, because with the time not being on pit road, or time being on pit road not counted towards your drive time, it makes it very, very complicated. I know they've got all types of programs in their computers on the timing stands to keep up with it, but makes it difficult. A little easier when the race is an hour and a half long and you only have 2 drivers to deal with.
Yeah, and my bad there, my complete mistake there. The reason we haven't seen pit stops yet is because they wouldn't have met the minimum drive time. So
right.
I confused myself there, my apologies. So yeah, the 40 minutes has now elapsed. And so the minimum drive time will have been served at this point. So now I would expect drivers, particularly those with who have a significantly faster second driver, to make those pit stop ASAP. And if the first one to do so, well, the first one to do so is car number 74, which is Shane Lewis, and Guy Robinson. He's a team owner, so that's a pretty good reason to get out of that car and hand it over to the team owner.
So he gets a few more minutes in his race car than you did, which makes perfect sense. Absolutely. Great to see Shane back, and he's good friends with the Robinsons and known him for years and years. It's good to see Shane back behind the wheel. Felipe Fraga usually runs that car with Gar Robinson. He had commitments this weekend, so that was good for Shane. It gives him the opportunity to come drive a car that obviously is fun to drive, but you certainly know that it's well turned out, well prepared, and that they've got good setups in their books on the trailer, and they're going to put a good car underneath you. And a great battle here continues. That's the 7 in front. Mao now up to 6. Ari Balog putting the pressure on, and more cars coming to pit road.
Yeah, they are, and we've seen this is Terry Olsen then handing over to Courtney Crone in car number 3, one of the 2 Junior 3 racing entries in this race. Terry had a really good opening to the race and then a couple of spins, but Courtney will now have her chance to make up some ground.
And one of the driver pairings that is very different in size and shape. You saw Courtney Crone with a seat insert going in. Looked like it took a minute to get that sorted and settled in there so she could climb in. And now the 23, second in the championship, Memo Gidley climbs out. Alexander Kariba, there's a seat insert coming out. Kariba much taller than Gidley, and so they'll get that seat insert out. Kariba will climb in. You've got time. Again, it's 91 seconds. Can't stand around for too long. You still need to get in, get buttoned up in case there's a hiccup somewhere else in the process, but you've got time. The best thing to do is make sure that you're accurate with everything that you do. Nothing goes wrong, and you'll still have plenty of time to get out there. When you get hurried, when you get harried, that's when the mistakes happen, both on the part of the crew and the driver that's getting in or out. So you just got to be methodical and get it done as more cars head to pit road.
That's exactly right. And Alexander and the rest of the team, I mean, they prepared properly for this race. In fact, Alexander told me this morning, the whole team, and in fact, all of Alexander's family, they've started eating the same pre-race snack. It's a Memo sandwich. It's a sliced wheat, for those of you at home who might want to pick up on this, it's a sliced wheat sourdough bread, almond butter, golden raisins and regular raisins mixed half and half. So Kariba, he's well prepared. He's going to hop into that car and see if he can get back into at least second position. That's the car number 3, AL Motorsports, AL Autosport with JDC Motorsports entry.
Give me that sandwich again.
It's a Memo sandwich. It's sliced wheat sourdough, almond butter, golden raisins and regular raisins mixed half and half. There you go.
I don't know what to say to that. Well, and knowing Memo and Alexander, when you say raisins mixed half and half, those two probably literally count. Yeah. To make sure that they're exactly the same number of regular and golden, because they're pretty meticulous in their details, both of them. But yeah, I don't know that I want to try that. Just saying. Where's the egg and bacon?
Yeah, well, quite exactly right. This is it's not. I wouldn't call that a breakfast sandwich. This race is early in the morning, isn't it? So
yeah. There's no egg or bacon. It's not breakfast.
I love it.
Tony Skazimit's loving the weekend so far, and fans there in the fan zone, they're probably having some eggs and bacon there on that campfire that I saw. And good battle continue raging here on the racetrack, and looking down into turn 1, slides up the inside. Balog is through, past the number 3. Good stuff, and it's going to settle down. It's going to take a while to settle down after these pit stops. The drivers that are going out there have to get used to the car and the new tires going on. But for drivers like Anthony Mantella and Tony Kazimierz, we were talking about this earlier, this one-driver format, they have a little bit of an advantage, I would think.
Yeah, well, at least they know how the car is handling. They know he knows how the car is performing, how much grip there is in a racetrack. So it's certainly going to be, he's just going to make that change, fill it up with fuel, and off he goes again. So this is it's a nice, easy, leisurely pit stop for these guys. Again, this is one of the things about this. This is a developmental series, so they don't want the teams spending lots of money and resources and having teams that have to just concentrate on finding half a second or so in the pit stop. It makes it a much more level playing field, and you don't have to have specialized people, let alone equipment, to find yourself just minimal amounts of time. But that pass on the racetrack was interesting, wasn't it? Because Ari Balog is one of just a few drivers who've yet to make their mandatory pit stop in this race. Tony Kazimierz is charging away, still at the front of the field, turning very consistent laps in the mid 1:43 range. And Dan Goldberg in second place. He's just pitted in car number 6. Ari Balog, though, he was still out on the racetrack. He was moving past Courtney Crone, who has taken over from Terry Olsen in the number 3 car.
Problems on pit road, Jeremy. While you were talking there for the 44, it looked to me like they're having a difficult. They're still there. That's Josh Sarget's helmet, the blue and yellow helmet. Kaz Grala in the seat, but the mechanic leaning in, and Sarget seemed to be working with something on the dashboard. The mechanic, at least on the left side of the car, was working on something on the dash on the left side. Grala not very experienced in this machinery, so he may need that help to try to fix whatever the issue is, but they've been sitting on pit road for a long time. They have some type of a problem in the cockpit of the 44.
They certainly do. They certainly do. And meanwhile, out on the racetrack, number 30, that's Ari Balog. He has still not yet made, excuse me, his first pit stop as he finds his way past a couple of cars that have just been in the pit lane.
So now Stakos climbs out. Hannah Zellers climbs aboard. Another driver change going on, this one in the 61, and you see just in front of the 61, the 44 still sitting there, the mechanic still in that left side door, working on something on the dashboard. Tony Kazimierz flashing down through the roller coaster one more time. Just in front of him, Terry Olsen. Kazimierz yet to come.
Courtney Crone in that car now. I know the scoring
right,
still says it's Terry Olsen, but I think they must have maybe not changed that driver plug that they have on those cars. The little switch that they have to flick, or supposed to flick, and I think they probably haven't done so. So she's going to go another lap down. She's now 2 laps down to Tony, of course, who has not yet made his first pit stop.
And so he'll tumble down the order when he makes his pit stop. Or I say tumble down the order. He'll still maintain the lead, I would imagine, but he'll give some of those positions back that he's taking away right now on the racetrack. Some of these drivers will get their lap back that he's just taking away. Courtney Crone certainly won't, being 2 laps down now, but some of these other drivers will. And it should put the 23 a little bit closer. It'll be interesting to see what Alexander Kariba can do on board the Duquesne, the 23. We saw that car seem to take a while to get up to speed in the hands of Memo Gidley, and then give up that position eventually to the 44 of Josh Sarget. So Tony Kazimierz, though, has been picture perfect, not only today, Jeremy, but his drive at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park was just impressive. I mean, it looked simple, it looked easy. It never is at that racetrack. I know that from experience, but the car just seemed to be on rails, and it's the same car that I see here. I don't see it bouncing off of curbs. I see it being very compliant over the bumpy sections, very compliant through the high-speed sections. It just seems to do everything that they ask it to do. They've found a setup. It seems to be a shock package that works on that number 60.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And that number 44 car, this is not, yeah, it's still in the pit lane. So this has been a disastrous stop of the. Is the driver still at the wheel of that car or not? Is he? Yeah, he is at the wheel of the car, and finally going to get going. But he's lost about 3 laps now, probably more than that, 3 or 4 laps to the leader. So completely out of contention now is Kaz Grala. That's a bizarre miscue for that team. Finally, he's going to get underway.
Wow. And have no idea what it is, but it didn't seem to be a driver change issue. There was a lot of pushing of buttons and reaching around on the dash on the left side of the car. Even Josh Sargent, leaning in the right side in front of Grala, was reaching over there to that left side, center to left side of the dash, working on something up there. So no something electronic or what have you, but whatever it was has set them well down the order after a great run by Sargent early on.
Yeah, so super disappointing for them, that's for sure. And meanwhile, Alex Kariba, he's turned some pretty good laps. So the last couple of laps, he's turned that car's best laps in this race. So he's running in 3rd position. He's a full lap behind Tony's Kazimets, but turning some very, very good lap times.
Yeah, who else is turning some really good lap times is the 54 right now, Corey Lewis behind the wheel.
Yeah.
We were talking about not seeing him in a car for a while, but right now he's down at a 42.6 the last time by. That was better than the 42.9 of Tonys Kazimets, your leader. So Corey Lewis absolutely flying. So is the 77. Good lap times there by Patrick Kayala. You would expect that out of Kayala, a very experienced driver and driver coach. He is on the move as well at a 42.4.
Yeah, the fastest lap of the race has actually been set by Scott Huffaker at a 141.85 in kind of a 46. He's taken over that number 46 car, the CT Motorsports car from Steve Scullin, and he's showing his paces. Scott Huffaker is a really, really talented young driver who's been driving in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in the LMP2 category for PR1 Matheson Motorsports. Already had a lot of success there, some big wins, and a 22-year-old from Menlo Park, California, is absolutely flying in that number 46 car. The bad news is he's 2 laps down at the moment. He might get to 1 lap down perhaps when Tony's finally brings that car into the pits.
Huffaker was very quick in practice the other day. So as you said, a lot of experience in prototype machinery. It's going to be interesting. Only 2 cars on the racetrack have not pitted, and that is the number 60 of your leader, Tonys Kazimets, and the number 30 of Ari Balog. Neither one of those cars have pitted yet. So it'll be interesting to see where they come back on the racetrack. And I look at it right now, Jeremy, and I kind of wonder why Kazimets hasn't come yet. He probably doesn't need the fuel just yet, but you would think tires would be an advantage. He knows he's got really quick race car drivers in some of these other cars right now. I would have expected, and there he is. I was going to say, I would have expected to have seen him in a lap or 2 ago. Yeah,
true. Fair comment. I would as well, to be perfectly honest. But he's going to bring it in now, and he's going to have to sit there and be patient while the car is refueled, and then he'll have to sit a little bit longer until that minimum pit stop time for 91 seconds has elapsed. And that 91 seconds is from pit in to pit out, so he doesn't have to sit stationary for 91 seconds. It's about 25 seconds or so of that is actually moving down the pit lane, coming into your pit stall and leaving again.
There's 3 men allowed to work on the car. You see the fueler is there, and 2 changing tires around to the far side. And again, like you said, Jeremy, it's a cost-saving matter. You don't want to have to load up teams with equipment and personnel. It helps with the cost and the budgetary side of motorsports. And now the tires will be changed on the back of the Ligier chassis. But here's the battle on the racetrack. Alexander Kariba right now has his hands absolutely full. Corey Lewis right behind him in the 54, and we talked about Lewis absolutely flying earlier. Is a full second faster, I think, last time by than, well, about 0.7 of a second faster last time by than Alexander Kariba.
Yeah, he's absolutely flying. Is Corey Lewis, just loving the opportunity to drive this car. And he is shining right now. He's closed that gap to just a couple of car lengths, and he's flashing the lights. Oops, yikes.
Big crash. Got a car upside down. Not exactly sure where that is or who that is.
Turn one?
Well, that's it. It's not a high-speed corner. Full course yellow. It's an incident at turn 12. And again, we believe it might be the 61 car. That's that 11 and 12 complex where you're on the brakes on the way in, and the car gets really light there at the top, but you're slowing the car down to get it through turn 12. And that is the 61 indeed. But that's not at, it says turn 12 on the screen, but that looks like the entry into turn 11 is what it looked like. They're getting a better shot.
So that's going to bring out the full course caution here, and Tony Kazimierz was just made his pit stop, and Ari Balog has not yet made his pit stop, so this is going to be costly for Ari, and certainly a stroke of luck effectively for Tony Kazimierz, because if he had, well, it's particularly costly for Ari Balog, but not so much for Kazimierz, because there were only 2 cars on the lead lap before Tony's made his pit stop. So if he had not yet made his pit stop when the full course caution came out, then he could make his stop and still be he'd still be in the lead, but there'd be fewer cars on the lead lap than would be the case otherwise.
So Tony Kazimierz leads under full course caution at Virginia International Raceway for an incident with Hannah Zellers aboard the 61 machine up at in between turns 10 and 11, a very high speed portion of the racetrack. The climbing S's there, you're just coming out of turn 10, a blind left-hand corner at the top of the climbing S's as you get ready for turn 11. Contact with the wall there. The car has gone over and was sitting upside down, so safety car is out. AMR safety team is there. Car spun, drivers left and hit backwards and then went over. So AMR safety team at the site. Always great to have that type of medical and emergency response at every IMSA event. And I can tell you, as a driver, gives you a certain sense of calm to know that you've got that there for you in case you ever need it, God forbid. Just closing down on 32 minutes to go.
And I think it would have been a fairly lazy rollover. If you go backwards into the tire barrier, yes, it can flip the car, but these cars have really good safety features in them. They've got a full roll cage, of course, and it'll be uncomfortable, but I wouldn't expect it to be that. It'll probably have looked a bit more dramatic than perhaps it felt at the wheel of the car. But it's never fun when you're going upside down, that's for sure. But it's an unfortunate incident there for Hannah Zellers, that's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, this racetrack, they do such a good job here to try to make sure that it is safe as it can possibly be for all of the competitors in every series that competes here. And those tire bundles, and you see a bunch coming on the trailer there, all packed together. They've got a banding on the outside that keeps them together in case of an impact. And it's one of those things where Kerrigan Smith works so well, who manages the racetrack here, works so well with his team members. They are prepared. They prepare a great racetrack for you to compete on in the beginning. If there's an incident in the middle of it, they are magicians with getting things back together quickly and safely so you can go racing again. That's exactly where we are right now.
Yeah, those tire barriers there, they are designed such that if somebody hits them and it dislodges a section of them, then they can kind of it's compartmentalized, so they can just pull out the section that might have been moved. It can either move it back into place again or replace that section. So it's something that the track rehearses all the time, It's not, it certainly isn't the first time that's happened here. So it'll take a little bit of time, but it's something that the track has rehearsed over the years, and they can get it done a lot quicker than would be the case if they hadn't practiced for that sort of eventuality.
Well, it's almost modular, like you were saying, Jeremy.
That's the word.
You take one piece out, you slide the other piece in, and that's the thing that's awesome about it. AMR safety team, as we said, on the scene there, trying to make sure that they've got everything under control and get that car righted, get Hannah Zellers checked out, and in the meantime, the field behind the safety car, inside 30 minutes to go, and this is going to be a completely different race, Jeremy, when we go back to green, because Tonys Kasemet's out on the racetrack. He's been very quick, but man, Corey Lewis was flying. We've seen some other drivers, Patrick Kiala in the 77, and this is going to allow them to close up. Perhaps, does Kasemet's have a lap on the entire field? No. As they come across the line, it cycles through. They're all on the same lap. This is going to be a race. He's going to have his hands full. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think the top 7 cars, I think, are still on the lead lap. I think from Anthony Mantella in 8th position on backward are 1 lap down. But the top 7 cars, which is number 60, number 23, number 54, number 6, and number 74 and 77, and a number 30, which is serving its pit stop now and should be able to get that pit stop completed and remain on the lead lap. Ari Baylog will remain on the lead lap in 7th position. So you look at those cars behind Kasemet's, and we certainly know that the 54 of Corey Lewis had been very, very quick. So had Kiala, who will be lining up 6th. He'll have to get past Gar Robinson in front of him and Bitar. Corey Lewis is going to have a good fight with Alexander Kariba, but I think that Lewis has the pace on Kariba, and if he can jump him at the start from the get-go on this restart, Tonys Kasemet's, look at that, Hannah Zellers out, talking to the safety team, and great to see her out on her own power and talking to the safety team, and they'll get her in the safety car. She'll have to go to medical to be checked out, which makes perfect sense, but good to see Hannah Zeller out that car on her own power. Let's take a look at the replay now. Just as we thought, drops the wheels on driver's right, hooks back into the fence backwards. And like you said, Jeremy, big impact, but kind of up on that tire barrier. It absorbs so much energy, which is the good news for the driver. Pretty square hit backwards, and it was a big one. And then that car rolls over. It took a while to get it righted, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to get that car righted, get her out, and she is walking around on her own, and that is great to see. It certainly is. I mean, carrying a lot of speed up the hill there through that left-hander at the top of the hill over the crest there. Easy to do it. In particular, I think that was her outlap. She'd just come out of the pits, taken over from George Stakos, so the tires wouldn't have been yet fully up to temperature, and that probably caught her out. And around the car went and into the tire barriers there. I said a sort of a lazy roll. It really wasn't a lazy roll because it is a lot of speed up that hill there, and it wouldn't have scrubbed off any momentum at all before it hit the tire barrier. So pretty scary looking incident there for Hannah, but the safety features on this car and the track doing their job perfectly, and Hannah able to hop out of that car, and she'll be back again for the season finale, one hopes, at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta next month. Yeah, in between the attenuator on the back of the car, the tire bundles, the way that they are set and all, really absorbed a lot of energy of that impact. Hannah Zeller is not the first person to ever crash there. We've seen a lot of that. I think it's flat in these cars, or almost flat, through turn 10. In fact, last year, Rasmus Lind spun there 360 degrees and went on to win the race. So that is an area on the racetrack where the car is absolutely at the limit, and one little miscue gets you dropped to the outside and away she goes. And that's exactly what happened to Hannah Zeller. She dropped that right side coming through 10 there, out into the dirt. The car hooked violently back to the left and made impact with the wall. Driver's left. Great to see her out, though, and the crew going to work to get us back racing at VIR. And you saw some of the safety features there that the crews use. They have a a diaper, as they call it, that they can put underneath the car when they pick it up on a hook, keep fluids from dripping on the racetrack. They had that there in case they needed it to try to make sure that they maintain the integrity of the racetrack when they get that disabled car out of the way. And I would expect, Jeremy, to see them just take that car to the back straight pits. If time is short, they can get it all the way back around to the paddock through various cuts. That's the other great thing about this racetrack. There are various opportunities to get damaged cars inside the racetrack and back into the paddock without having to drag them all the way around the racetrack and risk getting debris and fluid on the racing surface.
Through that, and yeah, this it's still going to take a fair time probably to clear up those tower barriers. So they'll decide to do what is the most expeditious thing for everybody before we get back to green. And there's 24 minutes remaining in this race, so it'll take a few more minutes certainly, but we've got those 8 cars on the lead lap. So Ari Balog has served his mandatory pit stop, and of course he's not sharing that car with anybody else, so he doesn't have to worry about the minimum drive time. Because there's no one else to drive. He's more than fulfilled that, so he's made his stop and is out there in the 7th position, last car on the lead lap. Anthony Mantella in 8th, and I think all the cars behind him have had at least one spin during the race. But 1 lap down, there'll be car number 17. That's Anthony Mantella. Christopher Allen in car number 7. Keith Grant in car number 40, Dario Cangilosi, who's taken over from John Brownson in the number 47 car, and Courtney Crone in car number 3, and Scott Huffaker in car number 46. They're all 1 lap down, so it's going to be very interesting to see how much progress Scott Huffaker can make from the back of that pack to work his way through the cars at 1 lap down. He's not going to, more than likely, he's not going to get himself back onto the lead lap because he's at the tail end of the cars that are 1 lap down. But he's certainly going to be interesting to watch him charge through the pack once we get back to green. And then 2 laps down is Nigel Sereno in car number 57, and unfortunately 4 laps back after that horrendous pit stop is Kaz Grala in that very fast Arbe Motorsports car number 44.
Full course caution here at Virginia International Raceway in IMSA Prototype Challenge competition. Hannah Zellers with a big crash up in turn 10. Great to see her out of the car, talking to the medical staff, and she'll go get checked out. And the crew's going to work on getting this track ready to race again. Jeremy, I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball a little bit. Obviously, Kazimierz has the advantage. He will have nothing but clean racetrack in front of him when we go back to green. But when you look behind him, who's your pick to put the most pressure on him? Kariba's right there. He and Memo Gidley have a win this season. Corey Lewis filling in this weekend has been spectacular behind the wheel of the 54 for MLT Motorsports. We know they put championship caliber cars on the racetrack, so he's in good standing. Patrick Kiala back in 6th aboard the 77 had some of the fastest laps we've seen just before we went yellow. Who's got the advantage when we go back green?
Well, yeah, it's going to be really interesting because there's certainly some cars that are very fast there with some very fast drivers. How hard has Tony's Kazimierz been pushing in the first portion of the race? That's really the critical question here, I think. Is there more pace in that Volvo Racing car number 60? There probably is knowing Tony's. He wouldn't have been pushing right to the limit. He wants to make sure to keep that car in good shape, keep the tyres under him in case of this eventuality. If there is a late full course caution, he wants to have some performance left in that car to push toward the checkered flag. But certainly Corey Lewis has shown really good pace. His best lap is about 0.3 faster than Tony's Kazimierz, so not significantly quicker. The only guy who's significantly quicker than everybody else is Scott Huffaker, whose best lap at 1:41.8 is a full second quicker than Tony's Kazimierz, but he's already not only a lap down, but the tail end of the car's on a lap down, so he's unlikely to make up that sort of deficit. But you're right, Patrick Kuyala, the Finnish driver in that US Racetronics car number 77, currently running in the 6th position. He has kind of got a point to prove because he had a really good result earlier in the year. And then there was a drama on the last lap, I think. I can't remember what it was now. It was at Mid-Ohio, wasn't it? There was some sort of a problem for that car. Was it last time out at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park? Yeah, they finished 4th at Mid-Ohio. Gosh, there was some sort of a drama in the closing stages, and I can't remember what it was. But that car is fast, and Patrick Kuyala, having taken over that number 77 car from Brian Athenas, is certainly motivated here to try and get a really good result.
Well, the biggest advantage that Tonis Kazimets has is the way that traffic has lined up. He is the lead car behind the safety car, but the next 5 cars, I believe, are cars that are lapped down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars sit between Alexander Kariba and the rear wing of the number 60. And all those competitors that we just talked about, Kariba, Corey Lewis, Patrick Kuyala, they have a lot of traffic in front of them they're going to have to work through. And that's going to be the big advantage. I think if we had 25, 30 minutes to go, it might not be as big of a problem. But as the clock continues to wind down and time gets burned off this clock, they're not going to have a lot of time to get that done. And that's where Tonis Kazimets, I think, has the big advantage. And that's just good fortune.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, the fact that he pulled out a pretty good margin before the caution came out, and the fact that when he came out of the pits, it went yellow on the next lap. So the fact that he had that big margin earlier on, that's put him in that position to have those lap cars in between himself and the second place car in the race. But as you say, all of those cars behind him, that's Mantella, Christopher Allen, Keith Grant, Dario Cancalozzi, and Courtney Crone, are absolutely nose to tail. And then after Courtney Crone is Alexander Kariba and the rest of the cars that are in that battle for the overall front positions. Scott Huffaker is behind various other cars as well. So even though he's next in line behind Courtney Crone in the race, he too has that group of cars that are on the lead lap between himself and the other cars that are 1 lap down. So it's the order is very shuffled at the moment, and it's going to make it interesting. The lights seem to be out now on the Porsche safety car, so suggests we're going to go green again next time by, and we're going to have about 15 minutes shootout to the end of this race.
Lights out on the safety car in round 4 of IMSA Prototype Challenge from VIR. About to go back to green. Tonis Kazimets leads the field. 5 lapped cars between Kazimets and the second place, number 23 of Alex Kariba. Then Corey Lewis in third. They're going to have their work cut out. How quickly can they get past these 5 cars in front and try to take the battle back to Tonis Kazimets? Hats off to the crew here at VIR who got that tire wall back together after Hannah Zellers had her problems there in turn 10. Safety car leads the field through turn 12. Green at the line next time by, we suspect, if the lights stay off on the safety car, and it'll be about a 16-minute shootout to the checkered flag. What do we have in store, Jeremy? I think it's going to be a wild one.
Well, the good news for Tonis Kazimets, those cars that are behind him, they're a lap down, but I don't think any of the drivers in that 4 or 5 cars has the pace to challenge Tonis Kazimets. So really, Kazimets, with all of his experience, he just needs to keep a wary eye on what's going on behind him, but I don't think he's going to need to push to the limit to keep ahead of Anthony Mantella, Christopher Allen, Keith Grant, Dario Cancalozzi. So Dario is the quickest of that bunch, but he's certainly quicker than all of those 3 cars ahead of him. But I don't think he's going to be able to challenge Tonis Kazimets. So that's doubly good news for our race leader, Tonis Kazimets. Originally from Estonia, by the way, is Tony. He's made his home now and has done for many years in Mundelein, Illinois. A great character, one of those guys who've just worked super hard to make opportunities for himself in this sport.
Kazimets leads the field back to green. We are racing again at VIR, and the charge behind him starts about in the 6th or 7th spot. That's actually second in the running order. It's the white car down to the inside, white and black, and the 44 streaks around the outside. Corey Lewis trying to take over second position from Alexander Kariba. Does he do it? Side by side into turn 3. This is the battle for second, even though it's 5 or 6 cars back, and Lewis not able to do it. And in fact, he's losing ground. Does he have a flat tire? Is something wrong with the 54?
I wonder about that. Maybe that car slipped well sideways, didn't it? And maybe it's just cold tires. He'll be trying to check that car out. He's certainly losing ground at the moment. He's got a problem. You're absolutely right, Brian Till. And that's really unfortunate for Corey Lewis. But at that restart, right behind the race leader, Tony Kazimierz, we saw Christopher Allen making a move on Anthony Mantella. Is that a flat right rear on that car?
I think the right rear is down. Right rear is down on one of the fastest cars we had seen there in the second part of the race. Corey Lewis will have to limp the 54 back around. And for Tony Kazimierz, that is great news. He'll hear that on the radio. These fights that are happening right behind him are for positions that are one lap down. Now Alexander Kariba solidly in second place, but well back in the order. 1, 2, 3, 4 cars in between himself and Tony Kazimierz right now. Let's see if there's some contact.
Yeah, I think he was probably hit from behind. Let's have a look, see if we can see what happened.
Right there.
Yeah,
right there.
Alex Kariba got into the right rear corner of Corey Lewis's car there as he turned in to turn 1 there, and I think it's probably damaged the suspension. I think the tyre is actually still up. I think it damaged the suspension on that car, so that's really unfortunate for Corey Lewis.
Such a great race going, and be interesting to see. I didn't see anything untoward with that battle that was going on there at the start. I think it was just good, hard racing on that restart. I think that at first I thought the suspension may be damaged, but I think it's just the tire that's down, Jeremy. Yeah. I thought there might be a little suspension, but I think it's the tire is so flat and so out of shape that it looked like the suspension was down, but it may just be a flat tire. These cars are reasonably stout suspension wise, and typically light contact like that does not create damage, but certainly the aerodynamic bits on the front splitter can cause havoc, and that's what we saw there for Corey Lewis.
Yeah, indeed. So that's going to take him out of contention for this race. We've got just under 30 minutes remaining, and there's still all sorts of battles to be sorted out here on the racetrack. Tony Kazimierz got a pretty handy lead. He's still got a couple of lap cars between himself and the pursuers, which is led now by Alex Kariba, but Patrick Kuyala, who got delayed somewhat, I think, in that incident at turn 1. He's going to be trying to make up that ground as quickly as he can.
Yeah, Kuyala now trying to get past the 57. Nigel Serino behind the wheel right now, and Serino doing a good job to hold him off. That's not going to make Kuyala happy, though. Kuyala needs to get through and see if he can take the fight to Kariba down through Hogpen onto the front straightaway. The 77 of Patrick Kuyala just behind him. The red, blue, and white, number 77. He's got Gar Robinson right behind him. But Serino doing a good job, good run through Hogpen, and Kuyala is going to have to fight to get by into one. Does he get it done? Yes, he does.
Yeah, hats off there to Nigel Serino. I mean, clearly left him room on the inside, go on through, and that's good heads-up driving for somebody making their debut in the professional ranks in this Prototype Challenge race this weekend.
Now Gar Robinson's going to try to look by. Oh, and a wheel dropped off there by the 30 of Baylog. Gets it back on the road. Now Gar Robinson in that bright orange and blue number 74 needs to get past Serino to get back into the battle with Patrick Kuyala. Meanwhile, Kariba holds down second, but it's Tony Kazimierz who already 5.3 seconds at the line the last time by. And as these cars are having to fight to get through traffic, that just takes the pressure off of Tony Kazimierz out in front. I'm sure his team telling him, focus forward. You're making time. And I don't know that they need to tell him any more information than that. And he'll also know by looking in his mirrors. You can see when he looks in his mirrors back down that straightaway, he probably doesn't even see another car as he heads into the braking zone for 14.
Oh, that's true. He's so experienced, Tony. He's driven just about everything over the years, including some Champ Car / IndyCar races. How long ago was that? It was a while ago now.
Long time ago.
For Paul Gentilosi's team,
yeah,
back in the day. And just a tremendous enthusiast and a heck of a driver as well. He spends most of his time these days coaching. He coaches for Augie Papp's team, Papp's Racing on the road to Indy, the junior ranks, and he looks after a lot of drivers there. He's helped a lot of them over the years, and in fact, there's 2 or 3 of the guys he's helped in this race actually, including Dario Cangialosi. Yeah, he's just driven the perfect race so far as Tony's Kazmats, and absolutely has everything under control. Hats off here to Christopher Allen, having made that pass at the restart in car number 7. He's the first of the cars a lap down. He's staying ahead of Dario Cangialosi. That's a pretty stout effort for Christopher Allen.
Absolutely, it is great showing there. And as you look back a little farther, here comes the 77 trying to get by Fiala. The climbing S's, you want to get by a slower car before you get in there, because once you get in this section of the racetrack, it is single file as Tony's Kazmats comes out of turn 12. The next 2 cars in the order are not second and third. They are a lap down. The 4th car in line is Alexander Kariba. He is the 2nd place car on the racetrack. You were talking about that battle and the good job that Allen is doing, still holding off the 47 of Cangialosi just behind. Good debut.
Very good debut, very impressive, yeah, for both of these two. I mean, they've driven, and Robert Mao, his co-driver here, they're long-time buddies. They've done quite a bit of club racing and have raced in Europe, even in BMWs, in GT4 car, I think, at the Nürburgring. So he's clearly not afraid of stepping out of his comfort zone. But he looks pretty comfortable right now, still holding off Dario Cangialosi. And Dario, who's a very talented young driver indeed, in that car number 47, 22 years old of age, from Chester, New Jersey. He won the 2018 Formula 1600 Championship in this country. That's one of the primary proving grounds for young drivers. So Dario has serious capability. And Christopher Allen, doing a super job to hold him off. Looks pretty comfortably as well.
Right now, Tony's Kazmats leads at Virginia International Raceway and IMSA Prototype Challenge, 6.5 seconds over Alexander Kariba. And when you look at the lap times, he's doing everything he needs to do, Jeremy. He's just a tick quicker than Kariba. He knows that Kariba's going to be caught in traffic. Alexander Kariba has 2 cars he needs to get by before he can have a clear shot at the rear wing of Tony's Kazmats. And this is the kind of traffic that you have to deal with. This isn't Kariba in here, but this is how tight it is trying to get through the S's side by side here at Virginia International Raceway.
Yeah, and that incident, by the way, between the number 54 and the number 23 was reviewed by the stewards, and their decision is that that was inconclusive. It was certainly, there was a whole shuffle of cars in there, so there was certainly nothing egregious by car number 23, Alex Kariba. Yes, he made contact with the rear end of Corey Lewis's car, but it was determined that it was inconclusive evidence to deem him completely at fault. So no penalty there for Alex Kariba. He'll continue in that 2nd position.
Got to be wholly or predominantly at fault. And if that can't be determined by the stewards, they're not going to hand down a penalty in the middle of a race. Kariba now closing down on this battle in front. Once again, this is not for position. He needs to get past Allen and Cangialosi in front of him, but they're mired in their own fight on the racetrack. So he's going to have to try to get into this battle and get through it. And time is running out. Inside 7 minutes to go from VIR.
Yeah, and this battle for second on the road here, that light blue number 7 with Christopher Allen holding on ahead of Dario Cangialosi. He's not taking any defensive lines, he's just driving his own race, which is exactly what you should do in that position. Dario is probably faster, although at least he thinks he's faster, but he's unable to make any sort of inroads here. Christopher Allen doing a really nice job just placing that car where it needs to be, concentrating on his own race, on his own lines, getting the best speed out of that car he possibly can. And Dario Cangialosi just not putting any serious challenge on him at all. Behind those two, closing in just a little bit, but not very quickly, is Alex Kariba.
Problem for the 57, Nigel Serino. He and his father, John, have had a good showing here. And this is up at Oak Tree again, that 11 and 12. And you just get up there a little wide, like we talked about. Can't get it slowed down. You drop the left sides and you're going for a ride. How many times have we seen this up in that corner?
Yes, on a fairly regular basis, unfortunately, and that's going to bring out a caution as well, probably, because it doesn't look like he's got the driver's door open. It doesn't look like he feels.
Oh, now he's got it closed.
Well, yeah. I mean, you should be able to refire these cars. They,
yeah.
Of course, they do have onboard starters, so you should be able to fire that up and reverse it out and get out of the way, hopefully, so we can continue this race. We're inside 5 minutes to go now.
A lot of times, these cars, they're so reliant upon the electronics. There's a whole process of getting them started and restarted. There he goes. Good job. He's gotten it done. I was going to say, a lot of times, anywhere between 45 seconds and 1 minute and 15 seconds is what it takes to get these cars refired. I'm sure the crew kind of going through some processes with him as well as he gets that car moving. That's the good news. And if he wants, right there on the left, just in front of him, is the alternate pit lane here, the back straight pit lane. He could get that car into that pit lane and just park it for the remaining 4 minutes and 15 seconds and leave the racetrack free of debris as the leader, Tonis Kazimierz, flashes by.
Yeah, so hats off there to race control. I'm sure they would have been on the radio to the team. There is communication between race control and each of the teams, race control channel. Can he get that car back into gear? Can he get it out of the way? Yes, he can. Okay, in that case, we'll hold off from throwing the full course caution period. So heads up really good job by everybody there to keep us under green with just to be probably a couple of laps now to go in this race. And Alex Kariba, he's split up that little pairing that was battling for position 1 lap behind him, but he's still making no inroads at all into our race leader. Tonis Kazimierz got a pretty handy advantage at the moment.
Well, the last time by, Alexander Kariba considerably quicker than Kazimierz by about 0.7 of a second, but 6.3 seconds effectively to go to catch him. And at 0.7 of a second a lap, he's not going to have the time to get that done. He is now cleared Christopher Allen, so clear sailing to Tonis Kazimierz up ahead. But man, look how far Kazimierz is ahead of Kariba as they climb into the S's. Alexander Kariba can now see the target in front of him, but with 2 minutes and 45 seconds, does he have time, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's a good point. No, he doesn't, is the short answer here. All Tonis has to do is just keep concentrating, not making mistakes, and he should be just fine. But Alex Kariba there, he's going to try and pull away from Christopher Allen, but suddenly now Dario Cangellosi is right on the tail again of Christopher Allen. They head down the back straight away.
Looks to me like Christopher Allen's Ligier has just a little bit more top end than perhaps the Duquesne behind him, and a piece of bodywork coming off one of the cars as they went into the S's. Now down through the roller coaster, it appears that Cangellosi has a little bit better handling car, but when they get onto the front straightaway, see if Christopher Allen has a little more straight line speed here. He certainly seems to down the back straightaway. It'll be interesting down the front straightaway as well. I think he does. Perhaps Cangellosi running a little bit more downforce.
Could be, and that was actually Kazimirz's fastest lap of the race. He's having so much fun. If he'd lifted off there on that lap, he might have been able to ensure that was a white flag lap, but I think he's having so much fun. He just said his best lap of the race, 1:42.60, just to hammer home his superiority here this morning. And it'll be white flag indeed next time around. They missed getting a white flag there by only 3 or 4 seconds.
I think it's one of those things that it really shows that there might be something in reserve that Kazimierz has. We saw it I'll go back to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Look how far away he was from the edge of the racetrack there in 11 and 12, where we've seen other drivers with problems. He was almost a whole car width off the left edge of the road there, where others have dropped the left side tires off. To me, this car is working so well. He has something in reserve, and you just saw it. He laid down that lap, the fastest lap. Now, granted, it's not the same set of tires that he started the race on. He got fresh tires on his pit stop, but just shows you how well that number 60 is handling. We talked about it. It is so compliant over the bumps, through the compressions, everywhere. You watch that platform and it just stays level, it stays solid, doesn't seem to bounce around too much as the white flag waves. Just, as you said, by just a few seconds last time by, and Kasemetz with another stellar lap. And watch the car, Jeremy. It's so rock solid.
Yeah, it is. They've done a great job setting up this car, and Tony's just done a magnificent job driving. He just paced himself perfectly. Look at the lead he's got over everybody else. He's pulled out an extra couple of seconds over the last 2 laps, just to hammer it home. And he's just going through the S's now. Just about 3 miles remaining, less than 3 miles remaining for Tony Kasemetz.
Even over the curbing, when he drops a wheel, when he puts it on the apex curbing or the track out curbing, that number 60 Volvo Racing Ligier, solid as a rock in the hands of Tony Kasemetz. He's got 2 wins on the season, rounds 1 at Daytona, round 3 at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, a second at Mid-Ohio. So he's not been off the podium all year long. You'll see if he can rack up another victory here today at VIR. Final lap for Tony Kasemetz. Down the back straightaway.
Yeah, just a couple more challenges to go. The roller coaster here, that very fast left-handed sweeper before you heavy braking at the top of the hill, down the hill now through this roller coaster section, and just a hog pen to go. And he's still up on the curbs. He's still pushing hard, isn't he? Love it.
Still pushing hard. Tony Kasemetz rounds this bend out of Hogtree. He sees it. The checkered flag. Win number 3 on the season for Tony Kasemetz. Volvo Racing. Flag to flag at VIR. For Alexander Kariba and Memo Gidley, another good finish. They should bring their number 23 Duquesne chassis home in second, and they do, but that is going to allow Kasemetz to add additional points, 30 additional points to his total on the season. He will stretch his lead.
Yeah, and that's going to be given a commanding lead now going into the final race of the season. Unofficially, 1,370 points for Tony Kasemetz to the 1,230 of Memo Gidley and Alex Kariba. There's 350 points for a win, so it's not all done and dusted yet for Tony Kasemetz. They've got that finale at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta next month as part of the Motul Petit Le Mans weekend to come, but another exemplary performance by this Volvo Racing team and Tony Kasemetz.
Tony Kasemetz got it done the way you want to. Never really challenged pole position, a race with rear view mirrors, cars disappearing in the background, endures a full course caution, and takes win number 3 on the season. It was not without excitement. We had plenty of it, as we always do in the IMSA Prototype Challenge. For Jeremy Shaw, I'm Brian Till. Thanks for joining us. Remember, one more round of the season